can be set up as any one of these tax codes, right, as far as the product, and a contact as far as the person you sell to is defined as a tax class. Now, have all of you set up your system set up as far as your company information up to this point?
I don't think I have. It's Superior.
Okay. So you want to go to Setup, System Setup, make sure this is your information, that when you print things and it all comes out correctly. Then your taxes is really just so that when you're even playing around doing estimates, those come out correctly. And the next is the employee setup. If I go to employee setup, you have your categories on the left side. You can create any new employee. You could also clone an existing employee from the right. All right, so to add a new employee, we'll just hit New Employee up at the top. Needs to know their first and last name. Their group is the grouping on the left. Position, department, email address. This is the email address when they send an email. This would be the email address on invoices for salespeople, return emails for salespeople, as well as when they're sending out of the system. It's going to default to whatever you set up as your primary phone numbers in the system setup. However, you could change these and add additional or different numbers. They have direct lines or extensions. And what their use of the system. Now at this point, the rest of it we'll get into later. That's really all you need to know. Pricing levels, if you want their pricing to vary based off employee, and then what products show up by default. I'm going to save that. Personal information is just that, home address, mailing address, things of that nature. You can add a signature and an image, and then your schedule, this is kind of your calendar. We won't go there now. That's part of your activity manager. The next thing we need to know about employees is because you've created a new employee, doesn't mean they can log into the system yet. You'll need to go in and add their user. Let me just actually do that from scratch. When you create an employee, you'll get this message. It's just letting you know you need to do the time clock. This is the password that you logged in originally into. It's just a second variation, a second security test, basically, to make sure you have the right to be setting up people's passwords or changing them. Their login name will default to the first initial last name. You can change it if you'd like. And then you're adding a password for them. Now, when you're adding a password for a client or for an employee, it's not yourself anyway, you'll want to, when you get to this screen after hitting OK, you'll see user must reset password on next login. That way you can set up all the employees with the same password, and the first time they log in, it'll ask them to change it. You can still, with administrative rights, still get in and change it manually or go adjust or see anything they've done. Then we get to a security template. These are the rights that they have in the system. If they're going to help you set up the system, you may want to leave them as administrator for now. Other than that, these will limit their access to different functionalities in the system. You know, standard will not allow them to see the accounting reports or the things of that nature. Production terminal is the terminal that's used in production. It's a browser-based terminal. If you're going to use that and this employee is going to be using that, you'll want to check that and, again, make them a standard or administrative right to that production terminal. Now we've added a new employee and they have a login. They should be able to log in and out as they need. The next thing I want to discuss is importing your customers into control. So what I want to do is just look at a sample listing of customers I have in my spreadsheet. Now this spreadsheet has listing across the top are a number of the fields that we can import into control. I recommend that you leave no spaces just because it just makes things worth it confusing to the system, but have a code across the top. Now looking at our Setup Steps webpage that you are on, down in step 7, for what we're talking about, importing the customer list. These paths are identical, other than this one will lead you through getting your list out of QuickBooks if you haven't so far. And then it talks about what we can do. Now looking at your list for import, these are the columns that are often imported into Control. They are not all required. Some people may have them, some people may not. And there are certain fields that if you're going to import, they need to match existing data already in Cyrious. Meaning, if I'm going to import the sales rep, that name needs to match the name I have as an employee in Control already. Same with a payment term. It needs to match what it exists already as a payment term. Now, certain things are just true and false questions. Like there's a is tax exempt. That would be true or false, which is different than a payment term, which is more of a net 30, net, etc. So these are some of the additional fields you may or may not use. Some of them, like credit limits, etc., you may consider adding them to your spreadsheet as a column and adding them all in before you import, just to have that information a little easier brought in. Other information, if you do not import it, the system will give you nag screens until they are complete, meaning every company is required to have a contact last name and phone number. So if I import a company without a contact or a phone number, anytime you go and work with that company, it is going to pop up a nag screen and ask you for a contact or phone number for that company.
I got a question.
Sure.
So the structure inside Cyrious is you could have one company and 50 contacts under that company's name?
That is true, but not if you're going to import that way. That's different. What we're speaking of now is importing one contact per company.
Right, and then as you go along, you could add multiple contacts under that?
That's correct. You can add as many as you'd like.
Okay. Do you have multiple contacts in TQ?
We have 200 from one customer.
Okay.
Right now, we've got this company list set up in Excel with all of these set up correctly, and I'm putting the companies that have multiple contacts in one time, and then I was just wondering how we get to the point where we have all those contacts under the company.
Are you manually creating this Excel list? Because I know you guys have talked about possibly just starting over.
Yeah, that's what we've done.
Okay.
And
so
I've
it's
done
all the same effort to you if you
just
put those straight into Control, the second and third and fourth contacts underneath the same company.
Pardon me?
So if you, as you're recreating your contact list, if you don't put those second and third and fourth contacts in a company into the Excel sheet, you just put them into Control. That's the fastest way for you.
Okay.
Contact.
Right now, I'm just creating this, the company. A prime example is Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. We have literally hundreds of people we deal with under that one account. So we're just putting it in the default contact as where the bills go, and then I've assumed once we get down the line, we'll be able to put contacts back in there as people call.
That's correct.
Yeah, you just add them to Control, right? You got it. Great. Okay.
All right, so once we have our spreadsheet the way we need it, we're going to save that or save as. You'll want to save it as a tab delimited is probably your best bet. It will work with a comma delimited, just we find that commas can be throughout your system and also create some issues. So generally it's a tab delimited file that you're saving. Next is changing its format. Then within Control, we're going to go to File, Tools, Import, Import from Text File. Here we're browsing for that source, where it's going to, we have our customer list. Once you've pulled in that source file, you'll see the data fields down the left and then a preview of your first column. You can also scroll through and preview the rest of the information as well as you're going through it. Then we're going to pull up a template of what we're importing. What we're importing are companies. So that is our template. Then we're going to take our field from our spreadsheet and match it to a field within control on the right. So I'll choose my company name, and at the bottom click Add Link. You'll notice it adds a link at the bottom and fills in the data preview for you to see. Next thing and you're just going to go down this list. The next thing is my phone area code, so I can scroll through. Now what you're looking at are actually all the fields that you can import for company information. What I showed you on that website are the fields that are most often or commonly imported. However, if there's other things you wish to import, these lists are here as well. There are a number of fields, like is tax exempt, that would be a true or false. Tax exempt, add link. Same with your salesperson, how it's entered, phone numbers. Once you've made these links, you can preview, and it's going to scroll through this preview on this screen as well. Because you'll notice I may not have a second address. Just make sure those are linked correctly. Once you've created your map, I recommend you save that map. By saving the map, then you can go in and pull that map back in case you need to do a second import. By pulling in the map, you'll notice it's already filled in all of my fields through that map. Once you've got your map created, you would hit Save, and it will import that customer listing. A couple of things about this import. It will want to import 100 client customer records at a time, and it's going to stop, review it, and import another 100. There were only 92 in my sample listing, so therefore it just finished at 92. Now that these have imported, let's say there's a mistake. I imported all of these, then I realized that, we really need to do it again because I needed more information. I wanted to put in their tax exempt status, or I wanted to put in their salesperson. You can do it again.
You could still just do that later, though, right? You don't have to import it all. You can manually put it in.
That's correct, most definitely. This is just to give you your starting point.
Rob, you may be on mute.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
I apologize. Sorry about that. The system hung for a minute. It might on yours, but it just let it finish. I just wasn't patient. After importing everything in Explorer, you may not see your companies that you've imported. And that's due to, by default, it's showing clients only. When I go to show prospects, they will then appear. Because when you first enter a company, until there is an order in the system for that company, they are a prospect and not a client. Next on the importer, if I needed to import this list twice, you can do so by going into the advanced settings and telling it to look up the record before you import. That way it will check the company name, verify whether it exists or not in the system, and then tell it to update it or ignore it so that it doesn't duplicate the companies in the system twice or 3 times in case corrections are needed afterwards. Also, the source file delimiter, we exported as a tab delimited. That was my recommendation. However, if your file is a comma delimited, you'll need to change that. you'll know immediately, because when you bring in your source file, this data field in preview won't look right if it's not tab delimited. You'll need to change it here to comma. Next thing I want to touch base with is really just the product itself, just so you can play around with it a little bit. You should all have a category for quick quotes currently. Now, we have not removed your other products out of your system. However, if you desire to, we can do that for you just to get them out of your way. You can even do it yourself if you would like. The pricing setup, adjust product information setup. These are all the products that are there. And you can go in and turn off the ones you want by unchecking them. And it will just hide them in the system. And you can always turn them on later. You're going to want to keep your quick quotes. There are a few others you're probably going to want to keep for now, like installation, shipping, your miscellaneous, your basic. But you can just check and uncheck them at this point and remove them if you don't want to see them. So let's talk about this quick quote product for a minute. We go into quick quotes. Your first option is your product, and you can just type in anything you'd like here, for yard signs. You can also create your own within the list. If I go to new add selection list, this is where you can add new fields by inserting or removing rows. Quantity that they're ordering, size.
Okay, I got a question.
Sure.
Now, as we start doing this, what is the product? That's where I'm a little confused because.
Oh, okay. I got you. The product is in our system is right now it's called Quick Quote. You can rename this product. That's why the copies are in there as far as copies 1 through 4. I can call it digital. I can call it anything you want. The
Okay,
product,
so that's
if I
top of the rim, really. Product is.
Correct.
It's like
correct.
flat
Now,
jet printing, light jet printing, whatever it is.
Correct. Whatever you want to call it. And that's kind of is the internal thing that you're using. Then the product, of course, yard signs, is really what we're calling it to the client. You know, what is this, what we're calling it to the client?
So the yard sign would fall into a different category, which we will rename those quick quote copies as far as if this is a direct to board, and then when we go into that, it will come up, the product will be the different items that we print direct to board with.
Correct.
Correct?
You could do that, sure. You can kind of define your groupings how you'd like, whether you group for banners or whether you group for digital vinyl. That's kind of up to you.
Okay.
How you kind of categorize. Now, and you may categorize based off of what income accounts you want them in. That's one way of looking at the big product, because the big product is the default income account. And so we have our banners 20. Then we're choosing the type. I mean, what are we printing on? In this case, sorry, we were doing yard signs. We're going to do something by the sheet and coroplast. Now, of course, I could type in anything I want, 10 millimeters, and then square foot, pricing, and then how we're charging for it. Meaning, currently you'll notice it defaulted to 4x8 sheets. It knows I can fit 4x2, so I can get 10 per. Therefore, it's going to use 2 sheets. It also knows that it's 60 square feet of printed area, and it's 4 square feet of scrap material based off of the 4x8 sheet. If I enter a price here, what it's saying is price per square feet for that coroplast. Right? However, if I change this from square foot to sheet, you'll notice it takes 2 sheets, and so I could price just so much per sheet if I preferred to do it that way. Now, these prices and costs can be set up by default, meaning if I go in and add to my list and insert this Coro 10 mil, I can go into my price and say I want to default a price of of 350 a square foot. I can also default a cost, which in this scenario would be my scrap. Is generally what I'd consider a 50 cents. It will then default based off of that value my cost and scrap price. Now again, it's going to, as I just set up this first time, it will require a reset, just a refresh. Now this type, as you'll notice, will define different drop-down lists. So this Coro sign is going to include my coroplast. It's also going to include some vinyl if you need to print on the vinyl and then mount the coroplast. So in this case, my vinyl I'm going to charge an extra $1 square foot for, and whether you want to choose for scrap or not. You can also add additional materials if you'd like, as well as for each sheet, roll. Each one of these will have their different savable list for them. So if I drop down, add, edit, differently for roll or vinyl. Then we get to the finishing up at the top. These, again, can have their own list and can be structured as well, or cost structured, price each structured as well. In this case, the units option is a little different. Right now we're saying each. So it just means a combined total. It's just thinking 20, you've got 20 each. I could say that, no, I need 60 grommets altogether, or 20 or 80, really. Or I could say just corners, and it's going to know I need 80, because there's corners. I can also say per each. Now, per each would mean per quantity. So in this case, I could say 4, and my price each. Now, saying per each of 4 and saying corners will do the same thing. Still going to get the same result. It's just how it's looking at it based off of your unit. Labor will always work in hours at this point. Choose your hours. Again, we're setting our price default based off of these drop-down lists.
So when you're, say we're under this coroplast sign right now, and when you click over on the finishing, is the items you put in the finishing going to hold regardless of the product that you select from that point forward?
That just for the Coro yard signs. That's
well, this drop-down list will hold for everything. This is a separate list, not just for coroplast.
All right.
Right. And then labor, of course. Kind of, we could say we can do a quarter of 15 minutes worth of labor. Add-ons. These are the questions, the modifiers, similar to what you might have played around with. If you have specific questions, it could be for rush charges. It could be for additional values that you want to add. Those are add-ons. We can talk about that in an additional class. Your summary is your pricing summary of how it, so much in material, so much in finishing, so much in labor. You can discount it by a percentage or a dollar amount. You can also just overwrite the price. If I say they're $15 a piece, it will overwrite the price. If you overwrite a unit price or a base price, you'll see that the OV becomes checked. That just lets you know it's been overwritten. You can uncheck it, and it will go back to the system calculated price, if need be. Any questions about it? And that's really basically the product. You have your production notes, your file information at the bottom.
Okay, can I back up for a moment?
Certainly.
I'm a little confused because we're going to use this quick quote to start adding our products in there. And when I ask, is the finishing button, I mean, it's going to get really muddy in the finishing department, in the finishing section.
So that's for every line we put in? Or?
I'll give you an example. Say we did a photographic Duratrans. Some of the things that are in finishing for that item doesn't necessarily need to be in for a Coro sign. That's where I'm a little...
That's where you're at. Okay. No, this list is different by product. So right now, this quick quote has its own list, whereas if I go to this quick quote copy 2, which is what we'll rename, it will have a separate list of its own. You're not having to carry it from product to product, but within this product, it will hold that list.
Awesome.
So,
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Because the next thing we're going to want to do here is when I look at this quick quote, if I go to line item and then view product, it will pull this product up for quick quote. A couple of things I want to talk about this. I do not want you to rename quick quote. I don't want you to rename the original one. The copies 2 through 4 I want you to rename, and if you need more, we'll create more for you in your system. Leave the original. So from in quick quote, I could rename this to digital banner, whatever I may be, right?
Gotcha.
You know, banner, if that's the product I want. Now the other thing to think about, you'll see it just jumps up and it's now called digital banner. Same product. The thing to think about when you rename a product, though, what are its taxability codes? Is it goods or services? And then what income account is it? Right now it's going into digital print income. So these are defined based off of the product. Now, this income can be triggered on the estimate as well. You're not limited to that. It's just the default. Meaning when I'm in this product, if I need to change the income account, you can go to advanced and change it from here.
Okay.
But currently, that's just where it's defaulting from. Thoughts, questions?
I want to see you go over into a quote now and use these couple products that we've been working with.
All right. Just start up a new one.
Yeah.
Rob, would this be a good time to maybe have Stephanie do one?
Sure.
No, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to watch you do it. I've had too much on already.
So how about at least someone tell me it's something they want me to quote? Fairly simple. And we'll put that in together.
A photographic print, 30 by 40.
Photo print, 30 by 40. If in case you wanted any text, just one of them, how many?
4.
4. And I assume it's being printed on a roll.
Correct.
First. Okay. What kind of material?
Kodak paper.
And again, I could set this in my list as a default. For now, I'm just typing it in. It's not in there yet. Okay, we're going to charge by the square foot, I assume.
Yep.
And what's your price per square?
$10.
Do you want to charge anything for scrap? Currently, it thinks you're running on this on a 54-inch roll. Would that be correct?
No, it's 50-inch roll.
50? All right.
Yep.
Just like the other list, we can add these lists as well. I'll say insert 50. It's on a 50-inch roll. So it now thinks you have 8 feet of scrap, basically. You can fit 1 by 4. Get a scrap. Anything else we need to do to this?
Nope, that's it.
Then that's your quote.
I got a question.
Sure.
How do you see what your profit is on this job or what your cost is?
This product does not have costing behind it. This doesn't use parts or cost as far as the quick quote. This is for easy entry. The cost is kind of with the other product. What we're basically recommending is kind of get started with this system, putting in your orders and history as you can, and then you should probably, once you're comfortable and get going, then you can start looking at building your other products and put costing behind them and get those worked out. All right, now a couple things. Just once we have this, I'm going to go ahead and create this as a test company, this estimate. Now once we've entered in the company name, description, we can save this. We'll let you know the bulleted text, what's printing, as far as what's on a paper, the work order compared to the estimate. You can remove everything from an estimate and invoice other than this description by clicking print description only, and then it will only print what you've typed into this text field. Note as well. We'll save this as an estimate. It's now pending. We can print that estimate and email it or convert it to an order. Once you've converted it to an order, you can then, of course, print your work order. You don't want to take a payment yet. Those pop-up windows asking me to take a payment reminder is predominantly because my test company is a cash client. So we said we wanted 50% deposit before we pay it, as well as they're not supposed to have money in receivables, so it keeps annoying me that they have money in receivables. Then we can print this as a work order or invoice. The key to these, in my opinion, once you've gotten in your orders, just remember the entire system navigates through Explore. Now I'm going to go to Explore Orders, and it's going to show me all the orders, the one I just created. I can see the line items for those orders, etc. So these Explore windows is really where you search and hunt and print and do everything else from, because from here I can also print directly. I don't need to open up the order. I can do everything directly from a right mouse function in Explore once the order is created. And that's really what we have for you today to get you started.
Rob, why don't we take a second and talk about homework for tonight to prep for tomorrow? The first thing would be, if for everybody that hasn't finished steps 2 and 3, if you could do those, that'd be great. We want to try to close things out each day so that by the time we get to the end of the week, we're ready to go live. So let's finish 2 and 3. Secondly, why don't you do test estimates for about 15 or 20 of your most frequently quoted jobs? And that may sound like a lot, but as you saw, Rob can go through and put in an estimate in a matter of minutes. When you put in your test estimate, save it under Test Company. Test Company is a company that's preloaded into your control system. And then the reason for that is it makes it easier to clean them out. As you go, definitely jot down the questions you have. The purpose of putting in these estimates is twofold. Number one, begin to preload your system in some of those drop-downs. And number two, define the edges of your knowledge, the things you don't understand, so you list them out, and we go over them tomorrow. And then one last thing. The third thing would be do step 9. It's a very quick step, and it's a good one just to get out of the way. Thank you all. Tomorrow we're going to start sharp right at 12:30 Eastern, 11:30 Central. Look forward to the group session then.